Hello, this is my lecture on the short story Roman Fever by Edith Wharton. Today we are going to be talking more in detail about the theme, setting, underlying symbols, and relevance the short story still has today. We are going to begin by talking about the author of the short story, Edith Wharton. She is most well known for her works between 1900 and 1938, as she extensively wrote about stories happening during World War I, and her novel Age of Innocence won the Pulitzer Prize. Feminist critics have overlooked the works of Wharton and her references to the prevailing social and political issues that continue to occur when accepting women in work settings and marriages. In particular, Roman Fever looks at the social prejudice against women during her times, and has written plenty of novels and short stories that discuss the issues that come with the sexual gratification that men seek from women. Also, it talks about the forced marriages that are seen as more convenient than wanted, and the work-in relations between men and women. Edith Wharton is seen as an author that wasn't afraid to write about the sexual identity of a woman, as they've been suppressed by men for decades, and she perfectly writes about the social challenges that come with being a woman. Now let's begin discussing the short story with a quick summary. The readers follow the journey of two women that have a horrible case of jealousy that is quite ongoing throughout all the years they've known each other. The jealousy is a result of a love affair, including a man and those two women, Mrs. Slade and Mrs. Annesley. Both of the ladies hold envy over each other and go to extreme lengths to prove their supremacy. Their daughters, Jenny and Barbara, live in Italy, and they are reunited when visiting them. Their daughters warn their mothers of all that goes to hell once the sun goes down in Italy, and the city will soon be corrupted by all the darkness that comes out at nightfall. As the daughters warned, Mrs. Annesley and Mrs. Slade never experience a night in Rome without being faced with misfortune, danger, or confusion. The title does have significance to the story, as throughout human history, societies have always fabricated tales. And these tales, known as urban myths, scare people into avoiding certain activities or acting with certain behaviors. In the short story Roman Fever, the main characters are warned about the Roman fever from their elders, and hopes that they might heed the warning and not give in to the Roman fever. The Roman fever was also known as malaria, and it was a significant danger. This was especially true at night because the mosquitoes that carried the malaria were more active. Just like the mosquitoes, these women are quite out to get each other and spreading their jealousy like a bite. Although you might think the setting is just a pretty place for this story, the city of Rome is actually a place where a lot of mystery and betrayal took place for the women, as Mrs. Annesley had once tried to take Mrs. Slade's fiancé a long time ago. Rome for the ladies reminds them of all the confusion and brings feelings they truly cannot make sense of. As the truth about Mrs. Slade's then fiancé comes out, the women realize they have deep-seated resentment for each other. In Rome together, they see they don't really know one another. The only thing the ladies have in common is their fear for the Roman fever. The Roman fever, according to Mrs. Annesley and Mrs. Slade, was something that would make anyone ill in their own terms. The ladies believe this to be true and are sure it happens when one visits certain places of the city that become cold at night. Roman fever shows that appearances are not always what they seem. Nearly every preconceived notion the women have of each other, as well as each of the reader's preconceptions, is overturned. At the same time, the story reveals a great deal about the expected roles of women in the early part of the century, including the roles of wives, society rules that are given to each gender, and the shame that comes with being an adulterer with affairs. As the story opens, Mrs. Annesley and Mrs. Slade appear to be a little bit more than the two American ladies of ripe but well cared for middle-aged women, sitting on a terrace in Rome. The conversation of their daughters, which can be heard down below, further emphasizes the role of older women. They say, "Let's leave the young things to their knittings," and a fresh voice laughed back, "Oh, look there, not actually knitting." The daughters cannot think of a single activity that might interest their mothers as they have reached an adult age. Knitting is actually reflected in the story to support the idea that women did not serve for much more other than doing small tasks in an older age. Women were supposed to marry young and have children, and they weren't encouraged to follow a profession such as writing. They were supposed to stay home and dedicate themselves to their children, or keep themselves occupied by cooking, laundry, cleaning, and any other house activity. A quote to support this would be, "Of all the crossroads in life of a woman, becoming a mother is one of the most powerful and most political. Raising a daughter in a society that has been largely constructed by white men, and still is for the most part, run by them and their desires is a political act. Men had a lot of control over their wives, and Edith Wharton also portrayed this in some of her writing. The implication clearly is that the ladies are physically, emotionally, and intellectually capable of nothing more than a simple task of knitting. By having the daughters patronized like this, Wharton wants the readers to understand them as stereotypical housewives that have simply burned out. Talking more about what the characters think about marriage during this time, Mrs. Slade still continues to think of marriage in terms of a social hierarchy, just as she thought about her own marriage to Delphin as the mark of a social superiority over her rival. Both of these women, Mrs. Slade and Mrs. Annesley, are not able to keep themselves in check any longer after 25 years of silence. In their discussion, they let loose with what the author describes as violence. Edith Wharton's Roman Fever describes many aspects of day-to-day life not limited to wealthy women, but can also be found in every human being. Realism tries to show the most truthful representation of the world, and Roman Fever does this very well. It demonstrates how humans are not morally perfect and how we can make mistakes that harm ourselves and other people as well. At the end of the story, I think the author definitely adds foreshadowing to the future of the daughters. Wharton hints at the possibility that Barbara Annesley and Jenny Slade will repeat the actions of their mothers. She does this by creating the following parallels between the daughters and hints that both girls are getting the exact same attention from young men as their mothers did 25 years before. One of the girls, Barbara, is very vivacious and very smart, and the other girl, Jenny, is very beautiful but otherwise ordinary, as Grace was. Barbara is likely to become the fiancée of a promising bachelor, according to Alida. After reading a story that was written so many years ago, I definitely think it's important to point out that a woman's role has changed tremendously and is making a great impact in our society today. Compared to years ago, women's contribution to society was limited and controlled by men. Now, women are standing tall and strong and playing a major role in many important areas. This includes parts of politics, professional training, medicine, business, and law. As Wharton describes, women were only associated with taking care of their household and babies, and well, knitting. But nowadays, they're engaged in work fields that explore their inner talents and also become dependent on themselves. I hope you enjoyed my lecture on the short story Roman Fever and learned something about the literature based on my analysis, not to mention the role of women in society then versus now. Thank you for watching.